And super thrilled if you were there at the 3-day. What an awesome event. So here's kind of the numbers. We had what? Total of 600 and, hey, Lori, how many total people were signed up? Lori, how many total people? Yeah. Huh? No. How many total people were signed up? 790? Okay, yeah. So we had about 790 people signed up. There were a good bit, 600 some people over there. So couldn't have asked for a more successful event. And part of it is people think the 3-day successful because of me. It's actually not. It's because of every single person that shows up there. Because without the audience, without all the mastery members, without all the speakers, the panelists, the 3-day would not be what it is. So I'm very humbled and blessed that so many people show up, support, and show their love. Having said that, let's get started. So today, the news came out about today's interest rate adjustment, interest rate hike. And for people that are real estate investors, they're like, oh my God, what happens now? Right? Guys, nothing happens, right? They keep raising the interest rates. The reason they keep raising the interest rates, why? Because still the market is too hot. And think about this. The dichotomy is the market is too hot. Inflation is still holding. So they have to keep incrementally raising the rates. Now, what does that do? What that does is people who have individual homes, they don't want to move because they're like, hey, if I sell my house and I move, now I'm going to have a bigger problem. Because now if I'm going to buy a house, guess what? I can't afford those payments, or I'm not willing to afford those payments, right? So I wanted to do some fun math. I thought I'd kind of share this with you guys, and this should be something interesting for you to look at. So let's just think about this. So I was looking at a house last year, and I said, you know, I'm willing to spend up to about $2 million if the house is nice. If it's really nice, maybe I'll spend a little bit more. So think about the payments. So I'm going to show you how the payments would work, right? So an average property, let's just say if I buy a property, about a $2 million property, right? And your taxes on that, so the insurance on the property is going to be maybe about, say, $3,500, right? Taxes about $19,000 in Oak Brook area. So what does that mean? What that means is this: that with today's interest rates, 30-year, and let's say I'm doing 20% down, so I put 400,000 down, and I want to just basically use a regular example, right? So 3.5. Okay. So here's something like to look at. If the interest rates were what they were, right? If I'm buying, let's say, a $2 million house, my payment would have been, before the interest rates went up, my payment would have been $10,800. Right? So let's just say $11,000. Now, if we change nothing, just change one thing, my interest rate is, so let's just say 7 on a jumbo loan, right? It would be 15,000, right? 15,181. So from just under 11,000 to 15,000. Now think about it this way: if I can afford a $11,000 payment, I can afford a $15,000 payment, right? $15,000 times 12 is going to be what? 150,000 plus another 30. So that's $180,000 a year, right? Now, do I need a house that big? No. Is it functional for me? No, right? I don't have any kids. I don't have a spouse. So then it doesn't really make sense for me to do it. Could I do it just for ego's sake? Probably I could. But I decided to pass on the property, not because I couldn't do it, but I'm like, unless I get a deal. Now, if I get a phenomenal deal somewhere, right, then I would buy it. So this is kind of funny. There was a property we had made a video about in Oak Brook. I had looked at. This house is about a $4.5 million house, realistically, to $5 million, depending on how you do it. So as a foreclosure, it was on the market at about $1.5 million, something like that, or $1.2 million, something. Phenomenal house, huge house. The best part of it was it had an in-ground pool indoors, right? I mean, we could have literally done a mastery. The family room, the great room, the room behind it was that big, right? So that was what it was. It was exciting. We all went there, made a video. But the problem was the floor plan of the house, very, very choppy, right? So this is what I'm trying to say. Even if I bought the house, I made a video, and Miss Lillian from Mastery bought that house. She bought it for her personal house to live in. What's exciting is I was talking to her, and what was exciting was she's like, we got bids just on the roof alone on the house, just on the roof, anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 just for a roof. That's exciting, right? Now you're like, Andrew, that is crazy. Think about, guys, what your mentality has to be able to afford a roof, that just the roof costs $200,000 to $300,000. Of course, a stupid house like that, you are not going to go for if that's not something you can afford. So she's going to do maybe $1.5 million or so just in upgrades of the property. But and for her, she has kids, she has other things, so they're going to enjoy the home, right? And I was like, once the property is done, I got to go take a look at it. We'll do a video over there, because I know how stunning a job she will do, having seen her other stuff that she's done. But it's interesting, because think about this, that instead of $11,000 payment, your payment would be $15,000. Somebody who's buying property in that price range, is it going to affect them? No. Hence, what's going on right now is Oak Brook prices, all the A area prices are higher than they have ever been. Yet, if you look at, and same thing with B areas. So let's say Oak Brook would be an A, and if I take Villa Park, that would be considered a B area. Villa Park prices are higher than they've ever been. But if I go to Dalton, if I go to D areas, guess where the areas are going to get affected the most with these interest hikes? Places like Bellwood will get affected. Places like Dalton is going to get affected. Places like even Midlothian is going to get affected. Places like Calumet City is going to get affected. Why? Because people in those price ranges, they don't buy a house, they buy a payment. Right? Because economically, so think about it, right? So the first time, if I go in and I'm a young kid, I just finished college, I'm buying my first new car, right? A payment is very, very important to me. That's why they ask, hey, where do you want your payment to be? And if I go to a dealership today, right? I'm talking about today, not at one point in my life. One point in my life, I never bought a new car because I couldn't afford it. It was just that simple. Right? But if I go in today and a dealership, a Rolls-Royce dealership is not going to ask you, what is your payment? A Ferrari is not going to worry about what is your payment unless you're buying a used one, then that person may care, right? If I'm going to go buy a Ferrari or I'm going to buy something like that, I don't really care if what the payment is, right? The payment is $5,000 or $6,000, who cares? Because clearly I can afford it. But if somebody is going to go buy a Honda, that may be something that may be of concern. So how does this affect the market? It doesn't. All it does is it makes the properties in A and B areas, they're going to stay pretty much where they are. The areas that are the C and Ds, that's where you better watch out. So if you're doing flips in those areas, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to have to basically adjust the prices down. So I'll give you guys a perfect example. South Holland is an example of that. Matson is an example of that. Not Evergreen Park quite, but let me think. What else? Alsip property prices have adjusted a little bit, not a whole lot, but a little bit, because more blue-collar workers. So if you take the south suburbs of Chicago versus the northwest suburbs of Chicago, right? So south suburbs of Chicago generally have more transportation business, have more blue-collar workers. That's just what it is, right? But if you take the northwest part of Chicago, there you have more white-collar workers, right? So if you take prices for Streamwood, so Schaumburg being A, Streamwood being B, Bartlett being B+, or actually A-, I should say, right? It's not quite Schaumburg, but prices in Bartlett are higher than ever. Prices in Streamwood are higher than ever. Why? It's because of the demographic population that lives there. So that makes a difference, right? So what is the interest rate going to do? That's all it's going to do. The market is not crashing. The market is not crashing. The market is not crashing. I will say this 100% of the time. Why? Because there is no inventory. If there's no inventory, the market is not going to crash. even in places that are in, say, some of the south suburbs, right? Or in South Side, right? Now, South Side, if you look at the property, South Side is a perfect example. Last year, a 2-unit building in South Side, pockets of South Side, it's going 380, 390, 400. Guess what it is today? It's less than 300. Why? Not because people don't want to buy it. There's a lot of homeowners would love to buy it, right? They would like to rent out one. They would like to live in one. The problem is affordability, right? But if you go to Berwyn, if you go to Oak Park, if you go to Elmwood Park, guess what's happening? Those buildings keep going up, keep going up, Why? Because there is a lot of demand, and people who live in those areas are able to qualify for those loans. So a lot of times people are like, oh my God, this changed anything. No, it will provide more opportunity for you and I as real estate investors. So what does it do if I'm buying an investment property? So I'm going to kind of go through those numbers. So I'll use the property in Elmwood Park as an example. This is a property I bought for about $200,000. It's a bungalow, right? That bungalow today, the way we converted it to a 4-bedroom, 2-bath from a 3-1, right? It was a very dated bungalow, and I bought it on the MLS last year. Now, the appraisal just came back. I paid $200,000 for the property. I did about 65 or so in work, maybe 70 when it's all, I haven't paid the final bill, but I think 5 is left still. So 70. So my cost into the deal is somewhere around $270,000, right? So now, mind you, this is a deal that I bought. I didn't buy market price. This is a deal. Appraisal on that property just came back at $455,000. Think about that, $455,000. Now, an average person would look at, oh, Andrew, isn't that an expensive loan? Well, no, because I'm not paying a $455,000 debt. Right? If I'm a homeowner and I have to pay a $455,000 debt, then your mortgage is going to be high. But as an investor, I bought a deal with lots of equity in it. So what would my payment be? Right? So what would my payment have been last year? What is my payment today on this? So let's just do the math. So $270,000, right? And then a 30-year loan at 7.8%. At 7.8. So we're using today's rates for a commercial loan. The insurance on that property is about $1,200. Insurance is a little expensive because it's a more expensive property. My taxes on that property are about $8,000, right? So my payment on this property is $2,700. So, hey, Joe, write this down, man. $2,710 is my payment on this. Now, people are like, well, Andrew, how does it affect an investor? So I want to show you this. A $2,700 payment in Elmwood Park, if this was your property, versus if I had it before Corona and I had done, or even during Corona and I had done a commercial loan. Let's just say it's locked in at 5%, right? At 5%. At 5%, the payments on this would be $2,216. So what was the other number? $2,710. So between $2,216 at 5% and $2,710 at 7.8%, right? That's almost 2.8% higher, almost 3 points higher, right? 3% higher. So the delta between the two, is about $500. Exactly, actually $490. So it's about $500 is my delta. Delta meaning, buy now versus that. This is on the investment side. What is it that I can make in terms of a rental amount? So on this property with a $2,700 payment, today I can get $3,500 in rent, right? So $3,500 in rent, my payments are $2,700. This is just for a regular rental. We're not talking about a midterm. We're not talking about Airbnb. You can't do Airbnb in that area. But if you did a midterm rental, right, it would be way more, right? Midterm rental, I'm going to get over there $5,800 a month. But in this case, I'm just assuming if you do a regular rental. So it doesn't affect me. Why? It doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect me because I bought the property as a deal. Now, if I had paid, right, a full retail price. See, when the interest rates go up, when the interest rates go down, right, the person who gets hurt are people who are on the lower socioeconomic kind of ladder, and they're homeowners. For investors, what it does is maybe there are going to be some investment properties I'm not going to make as much money. Is that true? Sure, absolutely. No question about it. But then guess what happens? It lowers my competition. So this is something really, really important for us to pay attention to, that whenever they say all the YouTube videos, all this kind of stuff, they're all made based on retail numbers. And, oh my God, the interest rate went up. Oh my God, everything's going to go in hell handbaskets. That's not how it works, right? If that was the case when the interest rate went up from 3% to almost double today, if not 2.5 times, right, compared to where it was during Corona, what would have happened? Hundreds of thousands of houses would be on the market. How many houses are on the market? None. Especially in good areas, there's less than a month's worth of inventory. So hopefully all of that makes some sense. Now, when should we expect more foreclosures coming to the market? So my whole feel is in Chicagoland right now, we have about 27,000 properties that are pre-foreclosures, pre-meaning before they go to sheriff's sale. So that's about 27,000 properties in the Chicagoland area. So what that means is that if it's 27,000 or so properties that are there, they should all be coming. The problem is the period in which they come is over a 5-year period, right? So some will keep going to auction. Now, to give you an idea, in the next 30 days, there are about 1,200 properties, ballpark, going to auction. A lot of them are going to get canceled. But ballpark, about 1,200 houses are going to go to auction. Some of them obviously are going to get bought. A good 30, 40%, maybe 50% are going to get bought by investors like you and I bidding at the auction. Rest of them are going to go back to the bank. So rather than waiting for the foreclosures that are, I want to be, want to kind of be very conscious about it, that there are not that many, relatively, not that many foreclosures in the A areas. So you're not going to have Elmwood Park, very many foreclosures, maybe a few handful, relatively. You're going to have very few in Naperville, very few in Schaumburg, very few in Northbrook, very few in all the A and B areas. That's just a fact of life, right? Where are you going to have more pre-foreclosures? They're all going to be in areas that are C and D areas. Why? Because those people are more affected in terms of socioeconomics. That's just kind of what it is. So I don't really expect a huge foreclosure wave at all. Now, are the numbers are they going to go up a little bit? Yes, they're going to go up. Is it going to be anywhere close to 2000? Absolutely no, for sure. And I'm talking about even in the Chicago market. Chicago market is #1 amount of foreclosures, meaning there is no other market in the country that has as many pre-foreclosures as there exist in the Chicago market. So how can I say that, well, there is this many pre-foreclosures here, yet that's not going to affect the market? How can I say that? Well, the only reason I can say that is because the demand is very strong, right? To give you guys a perspective, at one time when the foreclosures were high, right? The foreclosure really high. There were close to 115, 120,000, 160,000 houses at a time that were in pre-foreclosure in the Chicago market, right? That is not the case, guys. So for you and I, where is an opportunity? The opportunity is to go after homeowners that are in pre-foreclosure and buy a lot of these properties as short sales, buy a lot of these properties as pre-foreclosures with equity. I'm working on a deal as I speak. Just spoke with the agent today, and we're trying to get that worked out. That the bank just came back today, and they were looking for, so the property was on the market for $280,000, right? $280,000, the property's not selling. And it's been on the market for a long time. And guess what? So I went and saw the agent, talked to the agent, and I said, hey, listen, get me a payoff statement on this particular property. Payoff statement comes back, and the bank basically is looking for $220 on the house. I'm not willing to pay $220 for that property in that condition. I'm willing to pay somewhere around maybe 180 something for that house, right? And so guess what we're going to do? We're going to basically do a short sale on that property, because otherwise the homeowner is going to lose that home. The homeowner's already $80,000 behind in terms of their payments, right? So somebody said to me yesterday, I was having this conversation, I'm like, Andrew, why wouldn't you just catch up the payments, right? And then do a subject to, because the homeowner has a rate of 3.6%. And I'm like, well, the reason I'm not going to do a subject to, so think about this. Hey, Joe, can you turn that this way, please? So I want to show you guys on paper why I'm not going to do a subject to on this property. So let's just move this here. Okay. So think about this, that on this particular property right now, there is a 3.6% or so rate, right? 3.6% or so rate, and then there's 250 something thousand or something like that owed, whatever that amount is, right? This is the total amount that is owed on the property, out of which there is about $70,000 or $75,000 that I'm going to have to pay to bring the loan current, right? So if I'm going to have to pay out of pocket to bring the loan current, then I would have $75,000 in the property. On top of that, I'd be assuming a loan, the rest of it, at this amount, right? So why am I going to do that? Just to lock in a 3.6% rate? That makes no sense. So instead of doing that, because then not only do I have this money out of pocket, which I can afford it today, but why would I do that? On top of that, I'm going to have another $60,000 or so out of pocket for the rehab, because that I'm going to have to pay cash if I take the property subject to. So why would I do that? This plus this, now here's something important. If you have an investment partner that will put up this amount of money for you at, say, 5-6%, you take a partner, then it may make sense. This situation may make sense where you can take this property as a subject to and keep the property and keep your total debt level down. But see, my brain works a little bit differently. I don't think financially this is a smart idea. In my mind, here's what we're doing. We're negotiating to get the property for $180,000 because the property is in a floodplain area, right? I'm aware of that. I've already looked into flood insurance. And it's not an area where, it's a great area. For me, it's phenomenal. But for an average homeowner, if they buy the property, they're going to need work. So they're not going to do the work because they don't have the money to do the work, right? They may come up with 5%, 10%. So if I buy it for this, and then I put a loan, I pay another $60,000, $70,000, somewhere in that ballpark in terms of the amount of work I have to do. So 7, 14, 5. So my loan on this property, whenever all said and done, will be $250. Guess what this property is worth? Because by the time I'm done with it, this property, I'd have a loan for this, but the property is worth $370,000. 4-bedroom, 2-bath property, all brick, right, is worth that much. So I'm never going to basically take it subject to, because it doesn't make sense in that situation, right? So to go back to what we actually started with was that, is there a foreclosure wave? No, there are a lot of properties that are in foreclosure today. You can possibly go after them and it will work that way, but there is not a big foreclosure wave that is coming. So that's kind of what it is. Does that mean there is a lot of opportunity? Yes, there is a ton of opportunity, but there is no big foreclosure wave. The last question is, actually there's 3 or 4 more questions, but I'm gonna get into one more question, and that was, what about Lions? Somebody wants feedback for Lions. Has anybody flipped a property, rehabbed a property in the area? If so, what's the township like in regards with permits? Are they difficult, easy to work with? So guys, with Lions, be very, 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 very careful. The township, excellent township. Great area to own a property, right? Absolutely phenomenal. But 4 things to worry about Lions. Number 1, is there is a one of those operations, like what do you call it? Like pit mines or some sort of thing in the middle of town. Quarry is the right word. Quarry in town. So any house that is close to the quarry has foundation issues. The foundation may have shifted. It may have kind of cracks in it, some other things. That's number one, right? Number two is that in Lions, you're going to probably have to change the line. The line going from the outside to inside, with the main plumbing line, you're going to have to change. You're going to have to change it. Let me repeat it. You're going to have to change it, right? I know what they may tell you, but they're going to make you change it. And it gets really expensive, especially if that line runs underneath the driveway in Lions, right? Because now, not only do you have to change the line, but now you tear up the driveway trying to change the line. So be very careful, because they're going to tell you that's in the ordinance, right? That is in the ordinance. So just please understand that is an additional cost of anywhere from $10,000, $11,000 to about $15,000, depending on where that line runs. So make sure you do your homework there. Number three is in Lions, you need to have every single contractor, I'm repeating it because it's that important, to have a bond. They need to be bonded, they need a license, and they need to have workman's comp, right? They need to be licensed, bonded, and every single person has to have workman's comp. So if you can't use, and how do they find out? Well, they look for it right up front when you submit your application, right? When you submit for permits, they're going to require that. So it's really important that you understand that, you keep an eye on that. And number four, right? This is an important one. John is the guy, the big dude at Lions. You better do it by the book. If you do it by the book, they're pretty good to work with, right? But just please do not cross their path, because if you get them mad at you, right, they will make your life living hell. I'm just telling you this. Now, having all of those, if I have a property in Lions tomorrow, if I can find a deal in Lions tomorrow, I would buy it tomorrow, right, with all those factors. So just keep an eye on, the first thing was the thing about the quarry and the flooding. That's one thing to pay attention to, which streets you're buying on, and then all the rest of the things that I laid out. So hopefully that makes some sense. Having said that, we have, for the group, we had said we are going to do a drawing. The 3-day actually got away from us, quite honestly. It was supposed to be done at the 3-day, so my apologies. But it's going to happen on Friday. So we were giving away 2 tickets, 2 airplane tickets to somebody. So somebody's going to win. And if you are a member of the group, if you invited a bunch of people, you have that many more odds of winning. So we just saw today, a bunch more people suddenly started inviting a bunch more of their friends. Guys, our hope is that you find this thing of value, that hopefully we're able to share some ideas, some thoughts, some inspiration to you as we do these. So please help us grow, help us bring in more friends, family, because it's just pure value. Half an hour to 40 minutes, we try to deliver value. And that drawing for that is going to be on Friday. So if you have not invited your friends and family, so when they join, you get that many more odds of winning. So having said that, appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. And we will talk to you on Friday. Thanks so much.